Highguard has been, look, it's Concord, right? We all understand that. Concord has become the de facto phrase when it comes to when a game is bad, when a game is a failure, right? And Highguard 100% is a failure. Right now, it currently has 216 people playing this game. Blabs, I don't even know if you can get a match with this many people.
I don't know.
In a 3v3 game.
Actually,
Uh-oh.
there's a person in my Discord server a few weeks ago who was begging like everyone and their mother to play with him just because he wanted to play the bad game for shits and giggles because there's nobody actually you can get a match with. And so you have to get people in real life to be able to play.
That's so sad.
No bots to fill it out. That's
Nothing.
That's depressing.
You can't actually you can't get a match with real players.
Well, apparently there's 20 people who are working on this game still. We talked about that last week, but apparently all 20 of them need to get in a game to help out people find more games. But one of the guys who was laid off, because there was over 100 people working on this game, was a senior level designer named Alex Granner. And he went on a podcast called the Quad Damage Podcast. Now, this does not have a whole lot of views, but there's a story out about this right now on Kotaku, which signal boosted this. And the question was, why do you think this game failed? Why do you think Highguard ultimately failed? And Phoenix, I would love to hear your thoughts. Mal, your thoughts as well. As why do you think he thinks that Highguard failed?
Why do and what was his position again?
He is the senior level designer, or he was.
It's the audience's fault.
Well, yeah, I would imagine it's got to be. I would imagine it's social media and a movement that's been happening on social media where people just shit on games before they even play it and stuff like that. That it's clicks over substance is, I guess, what he would say, instead of it just being a bad game.
Mal, any thoughts?
I would have to agree with that. That's usually the common course.
Yeah.
For these developers, just to actually blame the gamers that they're supposed to be actually making games for in the first place.
Well, I'll say this. Alex Granner, senior level designer or ex-senior level designer for Highguard, I think actually does a pretty good job of why I think this game may have failed. Now, it's easy to point the finger, and we have seen people on Highguard point the finger at gamers. You're just not smart enough. But let's see what he has to say during this clip from the show here. When it loads.
Yeah, by the way, I found out a little bit about
What's that?
Real quick, I actually I found out a little bit more about Highguard and as to like why the game was so confusing and stuff like that. We can talk about it after that. Maybe he'll mention it. But I have a little bit of information now on Highguard that maybe people aren't aware of.
Okay.
Vision behind it, but it ultimately didn't land the way the team had hoped. From your perspective, not the gamers, not the corporate executives or anything like that, what do you feel led to the game's failure? And was there anything that you kind of learned from the experience?
Yeah, I think there was a lot to learn from Highguard's development, and I can only mainly speak to my side of it, as a level designer. But when I joined, it was they were trying to figure out this new ambitious game, and like this team always is pushing the boundaries. So you don't strive to create something that doesn't work out, but it happens, unfortunately. And throughout the development, we just really leaned into the competitive scene of it. And that was always one of my biggest fears as a player. Like, we'd play test frequently, and as the mode constantly evolved, it changed a lot, even in the year and a half I was at Wildlight. And some of that studio, some of those people had been there for almost 4 years. So I can imagine all the different changes and pivots that this team went through, but it was all to chase this final vision that we hope players enjoy. I think Highguard's one issue, or biggest issue, what it came down to was just it leaned too far into the competitive scene. And that was always my biggest fear. When we decided to go full in on 3v3, like 3v3 duos is always the sweatiest version of anything. Like battle royales, objective modes, wingman, you name it. It requires such high intensity of communication with your team and team plays that it doesn't leave much room for casualness. And I think that was the biggest thing that turned a lot of players off to Highguard.
Okay, let's go and stop. Well, hold on.
It's just your first few games, especially when a game like Highguard has this really big spotlight on it, whether for negative or positive reasons. You need to hook people game one. And battle royales, Apex had this big.
Okay, so let's go stop there. We'll continue here in a second. So the idea pretty much is that it was too sweaty, too hard to understand what needed to happen in the game. And Blabs, I bet you can speak on this in particular. I can as well, as that's exactly what we thought.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And they had no clear objective either. So you can say it's sweaty all you like, but nobody even knew what they were supposed to be doing also at the very beginning.
It was too complicated. And he referenced 3-on-3 mode, that being the most sweaty mode. And my first thought was these are all developers who came from Apex Legends. And Apex Legends is a 3-on-3 game. And Apex is very easy to understand. I think that's at the end of the day, a battle royale, the objective of the game is simple. Be the last one alive. Be the last group alive.
Well, yeah,
Whereas
but
in
also
Highguard,
Apex was also very, very clear, had clear objectives, very easy to understand, even kids can follow it, right? But this one, they didn't know what they were doing. They were just trying to throw whatever they could to stick at a wall, and they're like, aha, we'll try that. And obviously, they didn't know what they were doing.
And can I chime in real fast? So don't quote me. Obviously, I'm not. I don't know these games very well. So I think it was based off of a Jason Schreier article. So maybe check that out and check my math on what I'm about to say. But really fast. It was a very long article. But what I gleaned from it was something to the effect of originally the game was actually going to be some kind of survival game and a base building game. And what happened was that eventually eroded, but they kept some of those core mechanics without it working into the ultimate final game of what they were making. And they were also trying to lead us into a single player effort. So it seemed like there was a lot, again, check my math. I may have some things wrong there, but that was the idea. It was very ambitious up front with a lot of things they wanted to do. And then it seems like they didn't do a good enough job of getting the focus down to, as Blabs and Craig have said, a very simple to understand, this is what you do when you're playing. So it seemed like a ton of shit was in it, and they didn't really remove things and make it work perfectly. And when you look at it that way, it kind of sounds like the mess that you two have been talking about, where it's just like, boy, they seem to have thrown everything in at it, and nothing works. So that could explain it.
Mal, did you play any of a Highguard?
Nope.
No.
It's not exactly something that appeals to me, these kinds of games.
Right. Let's see how he responded when it came to how Apex runs into this thing.
Success, because battle royales were kind of an up and coming mode. It was really easy to understand as a whole after you played one game, and it's really easy to explain to your friend. It's like, hey, just be the last squad surviving. That's it. Whereas Highguard has all these different rules and stages. Like, oh, you want to loot. Now we got to chase this objective. Oh, we have to plant this objective. Oh, it's overtime. It has all these rules, which I think works at a really high level. But when players are just first coming in, it's a lot to grasp and a lot to digest. And on top of all that, because it was 3v3, it's just that kind of game just requires high skilled movement and shooting, which is already a pretty high entry as well. So if you just have a few bad games, your teammates aren't sticking together, you're just going to get rolled, and it's very hard to 1v2 in our game too. Because
okay, so with that said, do you remember a couple weeks ago when they came out, there was an article about how it was an article written by somebody on the team who he later deleted his entire X account after writing the article, and it was all about how everyone thought this game was the best game in the world. This is a surefire hit over here. How come nobody, this guy included, why did he not say anything about it? He knew going into this, hey, this is gonna be tough. He's the senior level designer here. He's literally designing the levels in the game, the maps. All this stuff that goes in there. I'm assuming that when you say senior level designer, that's what that is, right? I would imagine. So he has a senior position. It's his job to say, yo, dog, probably a little too much with the sweatiness over here. We should probably tap the brakes and make this a little bit easier for the casual to hop in. If we're expecting this to be a AAA hit, very rarely do super sweaty games hit the mainstream. And this had every opportunity to be successful. And if you're going to make a game that's for this hardcore audience, it should be marketed as that. You should say, this game is not for the casual player. But they tried to put it out there for the casual player. And the casual player, we went in and we're like, nah, don't want any of that shit. Don't even know what I need to do in this. And the gunplay is not very good. And it's confusing. I got to build the wall and all this. It was too confusing for anybody to understand. And yes, but we do have a good idea of who truly was asking for this when it comes to this being a super sweaty, crazy game. It is these 221 people. That's it. Here's your audience. You did it.